What if I told you that the most powerful loyalty system in human history wasn't created by a military strategist, a corporate mastermind, or a political genius? What if the formula for absolute devotion, the kind that makes people sacrifice everything, even their lives, was perfected by a carpenter from Nazareth 2,000 years ago? Jesus understood something about the human mind that modern psychologists are only beginning to grasp. Today, I'm going to reveal the 3 psychological laws he used to create the most enduring movement in history. By the end of this video, you'll see loyalty in a completely different way, and you'll understand why billions still follow him today. This isn't about religion, this is about the science of influence. If you're building any kind of following, leading a team, or trying to create lasting influence, the most powerful loyalty blueprint in history has been hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years, and nobody understood it until now. Here's what most people don't understand about Jesus. 12 ordinary fishermen, tax collectors and laborers abandoned everything they had, their families, their livelihoods, their entire identities, to follow a man they just met. This wasn't gradual. This wasn't after years of friendship. Within minutes of meeting him, they were walking away from their nets, their boats, their businesses. Think about that for a moment. When was the last time you met someone so compelling that you would instantly reorganize your entire life around them? Most leaders today struggle to get people to show up to meetings on time, yet Jesus created instant, unwavering loyalty that lasted until death. Traditional explanations don't cut it. They'll tell you it was because he performed miracles, but plenty of people witnessed miracles and walked away. They'll say it was his message of love, but the world was full of wise teachers preaching compassion. So what was different? What did Jesus understand about human psychology that created this unprecedented level of devotion? The answer lies in what psychologists now call identity fusion. But Jesus was using this principle 2 millennia before we had a name for it. He wasn't just gaining followers, he was rewiring their fundamental sense of self. And here's the part that will blow your mind. He did it using 3 specific psychological triggers that modern research shows are the most powerful drivers of human loyalty. The first one is so subtle, so elegant, that most people miss it entirely, even when they're experiencing it. Jesus understood that true loyalty isn't built on what people believe about you. It's built on what they believe about themselves when they're with you. The first law is what I call identity elevation. Jesus didn't just invite people to follow him. He redefined who they were at their core. When he met Simon, he didn't say, "Nice to meet you, Simon." He said, "You are Peter, the rock." When he encountered Matthew, a despised tax collector, he didn't see a traitor to his people. He saw an apostle. This wasn't positive thinking or motivational speaking. This was surgical precision in identity reconstruction. Here's what's happening psychologically. When someone gives you a new, elevated identity, your brain experiences what researchers call cognitive elevation. You don't just feel good about yourself, you feel fundamentally transformed. But here's the genius part. Jesus made their new identities completely dependent on their relationship with him. Peter wasn't just a rock. He was the rock upon which Christ would build his church. Matthew wasn't just forgiven. He was chosen to spread that forgiveness to the world. This created what psychologists call identity interdependence. Their sense of self became inseparable from their connection to Jesus. Modern neuroscience shows us exactly why this works. When someone elevates our identity, the brain releases a cocktail of dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, the same chemicals involved in romantic love and parent-child bonding. But Jesus took it further. He didn't just make them feel special, he made them feel essential. Each disciple believed that Jesus' mission would fail without them specifically. This activated what researchers call uniqueness bias, the psychological need to feel irreplaceable. Think about the people in your life who command your deepest loyalty. I guarantee they're people who make you feel like the best version of yourself, and more importantly, they make you feel like that version of yourself can only exist in relationship with them. Jesus mastered this psychological principle so completely that his followers would rather die than lose the identity he gave them. But this was just the beginning. Think of human identity like a smartphone. Most people go through life with the basic factory settings. They know their name, their job, maybe their hobbies, but they're running on default programming. Jesus was like the ultimate app developer. He didn't just add features to people's existing identity. He completely upgraded their operating system. When Peter looked in the mirror before meeting Jesus, he saw Simon the fisherman, one of thousands, struggling to make ends meet, nothing special. After Jesus, he saw Peter the rock, chosen by God, foundation of the church, essential to changing the world. Same person, completely different operating system. And here's the crucial part. This new operating system was only compatible with Jesus' network. If Peter tried to go back to being just a fisherman, he would feel like a smartphone trying to run on dial-up internet. The advanced identity simply couldn't function without the connection. This is why leaving Jesus felt like death to the disciples, because in a very real psychological sense it was. The elevated version of themselves that they had come to love and depend on could only exist in relationship with him. Modern cult leaders try to copy this, but they get it backwards. They tear down people's identities to make them dependent. Jesus built them up in a way that created natural dependence. The difference is crucial. One creates slaves, the other creates willing servants who feel empowered by their service. Jesus understood that true loyalty isn't born from weakness or desperation. It's born from strength that feels impossible to maintain alone. He gave people the most beautiful version of themselves, then made himself essential to maintaining that beauty. This is the first law of absolute loyalty, and once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere. If this is exploding your mind, stop now and hit subscribe. Because what comes next will blow your understanding of influence, and if you don't subscribe, the algorithm will hide my next secrets from you. But identity elevation alone doesn't explain the second psychological phenomenon that surrounded Jesus. Grown men crying when he left a room, hardened soldiers trembling in his presence, crowds so desperate to touch him that they would crawl through rooftops and tear apart buildings. This wasn't celebrity worship. Celebrities existed in Rome and people weren't killing themselves to follow them. This was something deeper, something that tapped into a primal human need that most people don't even know they have. Modern psychology calls it existential significance, the desperate human hunger to feel that your life matters on a cosmic scale. Here's what's fascinating. Studies show that people will endure almost unlimited suffering if they believe their pain serves a meaningful purpose. But they'll crumble under minor inconveniences if they feel their life is pointless. Jesus understood this at a level that's almost scary in its sophistication. He didn't just give people a new identity. He gave them a cosmic mission that made every moment of their existence feel monumentally important. But here's where it gets psychologically brilliant. He made that mission feel both impossibly large and intimately personal at the same time. He talked about saving the entire world, changing the course of human history, defeating death itself. But then he made each person feel like they were personally, uniquely essential to accomplishing this impossible task. This created what researchers now call grandiose purpose syndrome combined with personal indispensability complex. It's a psychological cocktail so potent that it can override every other human motivation, including self-preservation. Think about this. Jesus convinced fishermen that they were personally responsible for saving every soul on earth. Can you imagine the psychological weight of that? The crushing responsibility, but also the intoxicating sense of importance. When someone believes they're part of a cosmic mission that depends specifically on them, they stop living for themselves. They start living for something infinitely bigger, which paradoxically makes them feel infinitely more significant. The second law is cosmic purpose assignment. Jesus didn't just give people jobs. He gave them sacred missions that connected their daily actions to eternal significance. When he told Peter to feed my sheep, he wasn't asking him to become a shepherd. He was making him responsible for the spiritual nourishment of humanity. When he sent the disciples to heal the sick and cast out demons, he wasn't creating a medical corps. He was making them agents of divine intervention in human suffering. This psychological mechanism is devastatingly effective because it exploits what researchers call the meaning-making drive, the fundamental human need to feel that our existence serves a purpose larger than survival and reproduction. But Jesus took this further than anyone before or since. He created what I call nested significance, multiple layers of meaning that reinforced each other. At the surface level, disciples felt significant because they were personally chosen by Jesus. At the deeper level, they felt significant because they were saving individual souls. At the deepest level, they felt significant because they were participating in God's plan to redeem all of creation. Each layer amplified the others, creating a psychological architecture of meaning so robust that it could withstand any challenge. Modern neuroimaging shows that when people feel deeply purposeful, their brains literally change. The regions associated with self-doubt and depression become less active, while areas linked to motivation and resilience light up like Christmas trees. But here's what's terrifying about Jesus' approach. He made people feel so cosmically significant that ordinary human concerns, comfort, safety, even family relationships, began to feel trivial by comparison. This is why disciples could watch their friends be tortured to death and still refuse to denounce their faith. They weren't being stubborn or irrational. They genuinely believed that preserving their cosmic mission was more important than preserving their physical existence. This level of commitment is only possible when people feel that their individual choices echo through eternity. Jesus convinced people that every word they spoke, every step they took, every breath they drew was literally helping to determine the fate of the universe. Once someone believes that, normal human motivations become irrelevant. Imagine you're playing a video game, but you think it's just a game. You might play casually, maybe quit when things get difficult, definitely stop when you get bored. But what if someone convinced you that this wasn't just a game, that somewhere in the real world, every action you took was actually saving real people's lives? What if every quest you completed was preventing actual disasters, every battle you won was protecting actual families? Suddenly you wouldn't be playing a game anymore. You'd be on a mission that felt more important than your own comfort, your own safety, even your own life. This is exactly what Jesus did psychologically. He convinced people that life wasn't just random existence. It was a cosmic battle between good and evil, light and darkness, love and hatred. And he made each person feel like a crucial warrior in that battle, where their individual choices could tip the balance for all of eternity. But here's the genius twist. Unlike a video game where you're saving fictional characters, Jesus made people believe they were saving real souls, including their own. The stakes felt infinitely high because they were infinitely high. This created what psychologists call hypermotivation, a state where normal human limitations become irrelevant because the purpose is so overwhelming that failure literally feels worse than death. Modern research shows that people in this state can endure physical torture, social rejection, and psychological trauma without breaking, because their sense of purpose has become stronger than their survival instincts. Jesus didn't just give people something to live for. He gave them something so important that they were willing to die for it. And once someone reaches that level of commitment, they become psychologically unbreakable. The second law of absolute loyalty. Make people feel that their existence serves a purpose so cosmic, so essential, that ordinary concerns become trivial by comparison. If you're watching this far, you are different from most. Prove it. Hit like now and subscribe, because people like you deserve to know all the secrets I'll reveal in upcoming videos. But even identity, elevation, and cosmic purpose don't explain the most mysterious aspect of Jesus' psychological influence. Why people who never met him personally were willing to die for him centuries later. Why his movement didn't collapse when he died, but actually exploded. Why today, 2,000 years later, billions of people still organize their entire lives around someone they've never seen, never heard speak, never physically encountered. This defies everything we know about human psychology. Normally, when a charismatic leader dies, their movement fractures and fades. Think about it. Alexander the Great's empire crumbled immediately after his death. Political movements collapse when their founders die. Even modern companies struggle to survive the loss of visionary CEOs. Yet Jesus' influence somehow became stronger after his physical death, not weaker. This is the ultimate mystery of influence. How do you create loyalty that transcends your own existence? How do you build a following that doesn't depend on your physical presence? The answer reveals the most sophisticated understanding of human psychology ever demonstrated. Jesus discovered something that modern behavioral scientists are only beginning to understand: the difference between dependent loyalty and internalized loyalty. Dependent loyalty requires the leader's constant presence, validation, and reinforcement. It's fragile because it relies on external sources. But internalized loyalty becomes part of the follower's identity and belief system. It's self-sustaining because it generates its own reinforcement. Here's what's absolutely mind-blowing. Jesus intentionally built a system designed to become stronger without him. He didn't try to make people dependent on his physical presence. He made them dependent on principles and practices that would actually intensify when he was gone. This violates every instinct most leaders have. Usually leaders try to make themselves indispensable. Jesus made himself dispensable in the most psychologically brilliant way possible. He understood that true loyalty isn't about needing the leader, it's about becoming the kind of person the leader believed you could become. The third law is legacy activation. Jesus didn't just create followers, he created multipliers who would carry his psychological techniques into the future without needing his direct supervision. This is perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of human psychology ever demonstrated. Here's how it worked. Jesus embedded his teachings into repeatable practices that would psychologically recreate his presence even when he was physically absent. The communion ritual wasn't just symbolic. It was a psychological anchor that would trigger the same identity elevation and cosmic purpose every time it was performed. When disciples broke bread and shared wine, they weren't just remembering Jesus. They were psychologically reconstructing the elevated identity he gave them and reconnecting with their cosmic mission. But the real genius was in what psychologists call value internalization. Jesus didn't just teach principles. He made his followers experience those principles as their own deepest convictions. He did this through what modern psychology recognizes as the most powerful behavior change technique ever discovered: participatory transformation. Instead of telling people what to believe, he had them act out their beliefs until the beliefs became neurologically embedded. When he sent disciples to heal the sick, he wasn't just spreading his message. He was making them experience the psychological reward of cosmic significance firsthand. When they saw someone recover because of their faith, their brains literally rewired to associate Jesus' teachings with their own sense of power and purpose. This created what researchers call experiential ownership. The disciples began to feel like Jesus' teachings were discoveries they had made themselves. And here's the psychological masterstroke. Jesus deliberately created scarcity around his physical presence while making his psychological presence abundant. He told his followers that his leaving would actually benefit them because it would force them to internalize what they had learned. This activated what psychologists call growth through separation anxiety, the same mechanism that makes children become more independent when parents step back. By the time Jesus died, his followers weren't losing their source of identity and purpose. They were being freed to fully become the people he had trained them to be. Think of Jesus like the ultimate personal trainer, but instead of training bodies, he was training minds and spirits. Most trainers create dependence. Clients only work out when the trainer is there pushing them. But the greatest trainers do something different. They internalize the motivation. They teach you to become your own coach, to hear their voice in your head even when they're not around, to feel weak and incomplete when you're not living up to the standards they helped you discover in yourself. This is exactly what Jesus did psychologically. He didn't create people who needed him to be present to feel significant. He created people who carried his voice inside them, who felt his expectations as their own deepest desires, who experienced his mission as their personal calling. The communion ritual was like having a workout scheduled in your calendar. It forced you to show up and reconnect with the version of yourself that Jesus had revealed. The teachings weren't just rules to follow. They were the psychological DNA of the person you had become through knowing him. But here's what makes this the most brilliant psychological strategy ever conceived. Jesus made his physical absence feel like a promotion, not an abandonment. He convinced his followers that his leaving meant they were ready to become fully who he always knew they could be. Instead of feeling abandoned, they felt trusted with something precious. Instead of feeling diminished, they felt elevated to a new level of responsibility. This is why Christianity exploded after Jesus' death instead of collapsing. His followers weren't mourning the loss of their leader. They were celebrating their graduation to full partnership in his cosmic mission. The third law of absolute loyalty. Teach people to become the kind of person who naturally embodies your values, then make your absence feel like their opportunity to prove they've learned well. When someone truly masters this, they don't create followers. They create leaders who feel incomplete unless they're advancing the original vision. Now you see the complete picture. Jesus didn't just gain followers. He rewired human psychology itself. Identity elevation made people need him to feel valuable. Cosmic purpose made people need him to feel significant. Legacy activation made people carry him inside them forever. These three laws working together created the most powerful loyalty system in history. It's a formula so psychologically sophisticated that 2,000 years later, billions still live by it. Whether you're leading a team, building a business, or trying to create lasting influence, these principles reveal why some leaders create temporary followers while others create movements that outlive them. The question isn't whether these techniques work. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? If these secrets exploded your mind, you need to see my next videos. But only if you hit the bell. Otherwise, you'll miss the most powerful secrets in history. What's your opinion on these psychological principles? Leave it in the comments. Send this revelation to that friend with sharp perception. This analysis is speculative and based on historical accounts and public information, not clinical diagnosis. The psychological principles discussed are for educational purposes and should be applied ethically and responsibly.